Hello everyone. Have you ever felt like you were being watched or something wasn't quite right? In today's stories, a man encounters a strange woman on a dark road, and a woman's late-night taxi ride turns terrifying when her driver starts acting suspicious. Could the woman in white be a ghost or something darker? And what happens when a simple taxi ride turns into a life-threatening situation? Have you ever had a creepy encounter? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more spine-chilling stories. It was a cold New Year's Eve, and the deep quiet of the night wrapped around Jake as he drove through the winding back roads of Richmond, Virginia. He had been invited to a New Year's party at Darren's house, a large property located deep in the woods, far from the nearest neighbor. As Jake drove, he could feel the tension of the long road. The road that felt oddly more ominous than usual. The headlights barely penetrated the thick, dark woods on either side, and the chill in the air seemed to press in on him. Normally, Jake didn't use his high beams unless necessary, but tonight, it felt almost impossible not to. The narrow, curvy roads were nearly impossible to navigate without the extra light, and even then, it felt like the forest was closing in on him. He had driven this route countless times, but something felt different tonight. The trees, towering and dark, loomed over him as if they were watching. There were no other houses along the way, only a rundown shack he'd noticed a few times, its windows dimly lit as if someone was inside. But tonight, the house seemed especially lifeless. Then, in the middle of a long straight stretch, Jake's headlights illuminated something up ahead, something strange. A figure, standing alone by the side of the road, pale and still. As Jake drew closer, he could see it was a woman. Her back was turned, her body motionless as she stared into the trees, the white of her gown reflecting eerily in the headlights. The gown looked out of place, far too light for the cold night air. Jake hesitated. He thought about stopping, but something held him back. Instead, he pushed forward, keeping his eyes fixed on the road ahead. But as he passed the woman, a chill ran down his spine. He glanced back into his rearview mirror. To his horror, the woman had turned to follow him, her body facing him now, but she remained frozen in place, as if tracking his every movement. His heart skipped a beat. His instincts screamed for him to stop and help, but something told him that wasn't the right thing to do. She wasn't someone in need. She was something else. The tension in the air grew thicker as he drove away, leaving the woman behind. Or so he thought. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As he continued down the dark road towards Darren's house, he kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the woman still standing there, watching him. But the road remained empty behind him, the forest as still as ever. When he arrived at Darren's house, he pushed the strange encounter aside. The warmth of the party, the noise of laughter and chatter, helped distract him from the unsettling image of the woman in the white gown. But the moment the clock struck midnight, Jake couldn't help but feel a lingering sense of unease. The woman's pale face, her cold, unmoving presence, haunted him, even in the midst of the celebrations. When the party finally wound down, Jake was ready to leave. But just as he was about to pull away, his car's tire pressure light came on. He checked his tires and found one was a bit low. Not surprising, he thought. Cold weather had a way of doing that. He hesitated for a moment, debating whether to take the alternate route home. But the thought of adding another 20 minutes to his already late night didn't appeal to him. He decided to stick with the original path. As Jake drove back down the same dark, lonely road, the uneasy feeling from earlier returned. It felt like the trees were closing in on him, the silence of the road almost suffocating. And then, just as he neared the spot where he had seen the woman, the thought hit him like a cold wave. What if she was still out there? The question gnawed at him as he glanced nervously into the rearview mirror. To his shock, he saw something. The woman was there again, standing in the same spot, her figure a pale silhouette against the blackness. But this time, she wasn't alone. Jake shook off the eerie encounter with the woman as he drove the final stretch to Darren's house. When he pulled into the driveway, he was greeted by the warm glow of lights and the cheerful sounds of people talking and laughing. Darren's house was large and spacious, nestled in a clearing surrounded by trees. It was the perfect setting for a New Year's Eve celebration. Inside, the mood was light and festive. The air smelled of good food and laughter echoed throughout the rooms. People were gathered around, clinking glasses, sharing stories, and celebrating the arrival of the new year. Jake tried to immerse himself in the warmth of the party, taking a drink and chatting with old friends. It felt comforting to be surrounded by the cheer of others, a stark contrast to the isolation he had just experienced on that dark, lonely road. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, Jake's nerves started to settle, but the image of the woman standing motionless by the side of the road kept creeping into his thoughts. He tried to push it away, reminding himself that it was just some strange coincidence, nothing more. The party was the distraction he needed. When the clock struck 12, everyone erupted into cheers. People exchanged hugs, shared New Year's wishes, and laughed. Jake joined in, trying to forget about the unease that still gnawed at him. But as the minutes passed, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The laughter around him seemed distant, and his mind kept drifting back to the strange woman in the white gown. He excused himself from the crowd and stepped outside for a moment, hoping the cold air would help clear his thoughts. The night sky above was clear, and the stars twinkled brightly, but something in the air still felt thick with tension. It was as if the night wasn't done with him yet. Jake didn't want to leave the comfort of Darren's house, but it was already late, and he knew he had to head home. As he walked to his car, the chill of the night air seemed to creep into his bones, the cold pressing on him from all sides. He climbed into his car, started the engine, and tried to shake off the nagging unease that had followed him all night. But as he pulled out of the driveway, the dashboard lit up with a warning. The tire pressure light flickered on. Jake frowned, thinking back to the cold temperatures earlier. It was no surprise. This always happened when the weather shifted suddenly. He dismissed it as nothing more than a minor inconvenience, but as he continued down the road, a strange feeling settled in his chest. That nagging sense of dread, the same feeling he'd had when he first saw the woman, was back. Against his better judgment, Jake decided not to take the long way around. He didn't want to go any further out of his way. The thought of that eerie stretch of road made his stomach turn, but he convinced himself it was safer to just head back the way he came. Just a few minutes into his drive, a strange noise cut through the silence, the unmistakable sound of something scraping against the road. Jake's stomach dropped. He pulled over to the side of the road, the tires screeching as they stopped. As he stepped out of the car, the cold hit him like a wave. His heart raced in panic as he shone the light on his tires. Every single one was shredded, torn apart, as if by claws. He felt the hairs of his neck rise. Suddenly, a snap of a twig echoed from the darkness. Jake froze, and then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he heard it. "I see you." His heart beat. He whipped around. There, just a few feet away at the edge of the trees, stood the woman again. This time, her face was twisted and grotesque. Half of her jaw was missing, leaving only a dark, empty space, but her eyes, they were locked onto Jake's with a twisted grin. Panic surged through him. His legs froze for a moment, his mind screaming at him to run. Then, instinct kicked in. He turned and ran. He didn't look back. The terrifying sound of her footsteps in the leaves behind him pushed him faster, the only thought in his mind. Get away, get away. As Jake made his way out of Darren's house, he still couldn't shake the lingering sense of unease. He was ready to put the strange encounter behind him, but the knot in his stomach wouldn't loosen. Before he even got to the car, he noticed the low tire pressure light flickering on the dashboard. He sighed, expecting it to be the cold weather messing with his older model car, but it still sent a shiver down his spine. Tires had been fine when he arrived at Darren's. He checked them quickly, assuming it was nothing more than a small issue that would resolve once he drove a little further. Jake considered taking a different route, but with the night growing later and the roads getting emptier, he didn't want to go out of his way. He decided to stick with the same path after all. What were the odds the strange woman would still be there? But as he drove, the tires started to make a strange scraping noise. Jake's heart dropped. The sound didn't seem right. He pulled over, his pulse quickening. When he stepped out and checked the tires, his blood ran cold. Every tire was shredded, torn apart, as if by claws long, jagged slashes marking the rubber. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. A sickening crack of a twig echoed through the dead silence of the forest. Jake's breath hitched. With trembling hands, he turned on the flashlight, scanning the trees around him. That's when he saw her. The woman in the white gown, standing just beyond the tree line, her face now a grotesque, twisted mask. Part of her jaw was missing, her grin eerie and unnatural as it twisted toward him. Jake's heart raced. He had no time. This time, he wasn't about to wait to find out what she wanted. Panic surged through Jake as his body reacted instinctively. His legs pumped faster, pushing him through the forest, as the horrifying sound of twigs snapping grew louder behind him. The woman was chasing him. Her steps were eerily quiet, but the cold air seemed to carry her presence like an invisible weight on his shoulders. Jake's breath came in ragged gasps, and he could feel his heartbeat pounding in his chest, each thud making the panic worse. He didn't dare look back. He only knew one thing. He needed to get to Darren's house, where safety might still be a possibility. His feet stumbled over the uneven terrain, the branches scraping at his skin, but the sound of her pursuit pushed him forward. He could hear her just behind him, but the moment he reached Darren's house, he didn't care. He banged on the door with all his strength, shouting for someone to open it. Darren's family rushed to let him in. He was shaking, his mind unable to process what had just happened. They called the police and a towing service, but Jake was beyond words. He couldn't even form a coherent sentence as he collapsed onto the couch, still hyperventilating. As the night stretched on, Jake tried to calm down, but at exactly 3:14 a.m., a soft tap echoed through the house. His blood ran cold when he heard the voice from outside. "I see you." Terrified, they rushed outside to check. No one was there, but a rusty knife was found near the grass, the same weapon the woman had likely used to slash Jake's tires. She had followed him here, and the terror wasn't over. Not yet. Days passed, but the unease still clung to Jake, thick and suffocating. The police had searched the area and found no trace of the woman, no sign of her presence on the road or anywhere nearby. To them, it was just another strange occurrence. But to Jake, it was much more than that. How had she followed him so swiftly? How did she know exactly where he'd be? His mind raced with questions he couldn't answer. The memory of her twisted face, the unnatural grin that seemed to mock him, haunted his every thought. What had happened that night? Was she human, or something else, something darker? The face she wore, that grotesque, half-missing jaw, wasn't something any living person should possess. It was as if she had been something torn from his worst nightmares. Jake didn't speak much about what happened to anyone else. They didn't understand. Darren's family had been kind enough, but no one could truly grasp the terror he had felt that night. So, he kept it to himself. The following years, Jake still found himself invited to Darren's New Year's parties, but each time he arrived, the first thing he did was avoid that damn road. He would take the long way, even if it added 20 minutes to his trip. He couldn't bear to drive down that stretch of dark, silent road again. The memories of her eyes, of the sound of her pursuit, would never let him forget. But even now, he wonders, what if she's still out there, waiting, watching? What if she's never truly gone? It was a warm summer night in San Diego, California, and Emily had just wrapped up an incredible trip with her friends. But now, at the brink of midnight, she was ready to head home. Her flight had just landed, and the bustling airport was slowly winding down as the late hours settled over the city. The cool night air hit her face as she stepped outside, her suitcase rolling behind her. Emily had always been an independent woman, confident, outgoing, and used to traveling solo for both work and leisure. She was no stranger to late-night arrivals in airport taxis. This wasn't her first time catching a ride from the airport to her downtown apartment, but something about this particular night felt different. The shadows seemed deeper, the air heavier, and the silence surrounding the airport parking lot unnervingly vast. She scanned the area for a taxi, her eyes catching on the dimly lit yellow van in the distance. It wasn't the cleanest vehicle, but it would get her where she needed to go. The driver, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a tired face, waved her over with a friendly grin. Emily, tired from her flight, offered a polite smile in return, and slid into the passenger seat without giving it a second thought. The man introduced himself as Carl, and he seemed pleasant enough at first. She mentioned her address, and they were off, the car's engine humming softly as they rolled into the quiet streets of San Diego. The route was familiar, yet the deep silence in the cab unnerved her. Carl asked a few casual questions about her trip, nothing out of the ordinary. But then, something about his tone shifted ever so slightly. Emily's stomach twisted, but she chalked it up to exhaustion. After all, she was used to meeting strangers while traveling. Yet, as the car moved deeper into the dark streets, a subtle, unsettling feeling began to creep over her. The lights flickered overhead, and the streetlights grew farther apart, casting long, eerie shadows that seemed to follow them. The comfort of the airport's bright lights felt miles away. She brushed the sensation off as jet lag, but as Carl's voice broke the silence again, this time with an unexpected comment about her appearance, a chill ran down her spine. Something wasn't right. But Emily, ever the optimist, tried to ignore the feeling gnawing at her gut. Little did she know, this was just the beginning. The journey home was about to turn into something far darker than she could have ever imagined. Emily settled into the back seat of the taxi, her luggage secured next to her. The hum of the engine was oddly comforting as they left the airport and hit the quiet streets of San Diego. Carl, the driver, seemed harmless enough. He was a man in his late 40s, with graying hair and a casual demeanor. His voice was warm, and at first, the conversation felt natural small talk about the weather, her trip, and the usual pleasantries. Emily, tired but relieved to be on her way home, responded with friendly smiles. But as they ventured further into the dark, almost deserted streets, something started to feel off. Carl's questions became oddly personal. "So, what brought you to San Diego?" he asked, his eyes glancing at her through the rearview mirror. "Business or pleasure?" "Pleasure," Emily replied with a smile, trying to keep it light. "Just a vacation with some friends." "Ah, I see. So you're traveling alone now?" His tone shifted ever so slightly, now tinged with curiosity. "Yeah, just heading back home after a good time," Emily answered, trying to keep her responses short. Carl's next question made her stomach tighten. "You're really beautiful, you know. It's nice to see someone like you traveling alone. Must get a lot of attention." Emily felt her skin crawl. The comment was strange, out of place. She didn't respond right away, unsure of how to handle the awkwardness. She shifted in her seat, glancing out the window to distract herself from the growing discomfort. Carl's voice interrupted her thoughts again, softer now, almost too intimate. "Is your boyfriend as pretty as you?" he asked, a slight chuckle following the words. The hairs on the back of Emily's neck stood up. She forced a smile, but inside, alarm bells were ringing. Something wasn't right. She felt trapped in the confined space of the taxi, every word from Carl sinking deeper into her mind. The night had just begun, and Emily was already regretting her decision. As the taxi rolled further into the night, Emily began to notice something unsettling. Carl hadn't taken the turn toward her apartment like he was supposed to. Instead, he kept driving straight ahead, the streets becoming emptier, the shadows longer. The soft hum of the tires on the asphalt felt oddly suffocating. Emily glanced nervously out the window, her heart rate picking up as she realized they were leaving the well-lit parts of the city behind. "Excuse me," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "You missed my exit. This is the wrong way." Carl didn't respond immediately. He kept his eyes on the road, the lights of the city disappearing in the rearview mirror. A few moments passed before he finally spoke, his tone casual, almost too calm. "We're just taking the scenic route, don't worry," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips, but his eyes remained fixed on the road. Emily's stomach churned. The air in the car felt heavier, as if something in it was pushing against her chest. She tried to stay calm, her fingers tightening around her purse strap. "No, I really need you to turn around. I want to go home," she insisted, now feeling a knot of panic forming in her stomach. Carl's response was chillingly nonchalant. "Why? It's just a few extra minutes." With every word, Emily's anxiety deepened. The city's bright lights had long faded, replaced by dark, empty streets. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up as Carl asked, "Is your boyfriend as controlling as he sounds?" You sure you're safe traveling alone?" Emily's heart raced. She could feel the suffocating tension closing in on her. She demanded that Carl stop, but he didn't listen. The car continued down the desolate road, the sound of her pulse pounding in her ears. She was no longer just a passenger, she was a target. The unsettling sensation of being watched grew more intense with each passing mile. Emily's pulse quickened as Carl continued driving without so much as a glance at her when she asked him to turn around. The streets were growing eerily empty, the darkness closing in around them like a suffocating blanket. Her stomach twisted with anxiety as Carl hummed softly to himself, the air thick with tension. Every word from Carl felt like another thread in the web of unease tightening around her. She could feel his eyes glancing at her through the rearview mirror, his gaze far too familiar, too intrusive. The unease inside her surged. Her mind raced, heart pounding against her chest. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being trapped in a cage. Without thinking, she pulled out her phone and quickly typed a message to her family and close friends, sharing her location. The text was simple. "Help. I'm in a taxi with a driver who's acting strange. I'm scared, please stay on alert." She hit send, but panic settled in as she realized how isolated she was. There was no guarantee that anyone would be able to help her in time. Suddenly, the car came to a halt at a deserted red light. The silence almost deafening. Emily's breath caught in her throat. To her right, she saw a police car parked along the side of the road. In that split second, everything changed. Her survival instincts kicked in like a bolt of lightning. Without thinking twice, she yanked the door open, her legs propelling her out of the car in one swift movement. Carl's shout of surprise barely registered in her ears. She bolted toward the police car, her feet pounding the pavement. The sound of Carl's angry voice faded behind her as she ran, the adrenaline surging through her body, pushing her faster. The blue and red lights from the police car bathed the street in a flickering glow, and Emily felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in what seemed like hours. She didn't look back. She just ran, her heart hammering in her chest, toward the one person who might be able to save her. The sound of Emily's pounding footsteps gradually faded as she reached the police car. The officer, a middle-aged man with a stern but sympathetic expression, immediately recognized the terror in her eyes. Without a word, he opened the door for her and gestured for her to get in. She slid into the back seat, her body still shaking from the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The officer asked her a few quick questions, but Emily could barely manage a coherent response, her voice trembling with fear. As the police car pulled away, Emily looked back, half expecting to see Carl's van following them, but the street was empty. The silence in the car was suffocating, broken only by the soft hum of the engine. Emily felt safe, yet her mind raced with questions about the driver. Who was he really? Was he just some random creep, or was this something more sinister? Had she narrowly escaped a kidnapping attempt, or was Carl just a con artist, trying to take advantage of her? The uncertainty gnawed at her, her thoughts spiraling as the city lights whizzed by. She felt a mix of relief and dread, like the danger hadn't truly passed. By the time they arrived at her apartment, Emily was exhausted. The officer gave her his card and assured her he'd be in touch, but as she locked the door behind her, the sense of unease lingered. A few days later, Emily's phone rang. It was her neighbor, George. His voice was shaky as he told her that someone had attempted to break into her apartment while she was out. The shock hit her like a ton of bricks. Had Carl followed her home? Had she been targeted all along? She didn't know, but one thing was certain: she wasn't safe yet. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. What do you think? Could these creepy encounters have been something supernatural, or just twisted coincidences? Have you ever faced a situation that made your heart race? If you've got a scary story of your own, drop it in the comments. I might just share it in a future video. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss more terrifying stories. Stay alert, and remember, sometimes the scariest things are the ones we can't explain.